By the 1540s, the court of Henry VIII was not only filled with silk, jewels, and roasted feasts, it was filled with a smell, not the scent of incense, not the aroma of spiced wine, but the stench of rotting flesh. After his devastating jousting accident in 1536, Henry's leg never healed properly. What began as a traumatic injury developed into chronic ulcers, deep, open wounds that repeatedly split apart. These weren't small surface cuts. They were large, inflamed sores that oozed pus and refused to close. Tudor medicine had no antibiotics, no understanding of infection the way we do today. Treatments involved poultices, lancing, cauterizing, and herbal pastes. Nothing truly cured it. In his youth, Henry was not the enormous monarch we often imagine from his later portraits. He was athletic, vibrant, and charismatic. Over 6 feet tall, exceptionally tall for the early 16th century, he excelled at jousting, hunting, wrestling, and tennis. Foreign ambassadors described him as the embodiment of Renaissance vitality. He loved sport, music, and pageantry. Food at that time was fuel for an active body. He could afford indulgence because he burned it off through relentless physical activity. Feasts were celebrations of strength and prosperity, not yet signs of excess. The Tudor court revolved around spectacle, and nowhere was this more visible than at the dining table. Banquets were not simple meals, they were political theatre. At royal palaces like Hampton Court Palace, tables groaned under the weight of dozens of dishes served in elaborate courses. Beef, mutton, venison, wild boar, swan, pheasant, heron, and even porpoise appeared regularly. Meat was roasted, stewed, baked into pies, and drenched in sauces thick with butter and cream. Sugar, a rare and expensive import, was sculpted into elaborate shapes that symbolized wealth and authority. To dine with the king was to witness abundance as a declaration of power. For years, Henry's body handled this lifestyle. He hunted for hours across vast estates, rode horses at speed, and competed fiercely in tournaments. His strength was legendary, but in 1536, a single accident altered the trajectory of his life. During a jousting match, Henry was thrown from his horse, and the armored animal fell on top of him. He was knocked unconscious for hours. Though he survived, the injury to his leg never fully healed. What seemed at first like a temporary setback became a chronic condition. Pain lingered, movement became difficult, the vibrant athlete began to slow. Over time, the ulcers became severely infected. Contemporary accounts suggest the smell was overpowering. Some ambassadors and servants wrote that the odor could be detected before the king even entered a room. The infection likely produced necrotic tissue dyeing flesh, which emits a strong, sickly, unmistakable stench. Imagine a mix of decay and metal, trapped beneath layers of velvet and armor. Courtiers were forced to pretend nothing was wrong. No one dared comment. Servants changed bandages in silence. Rooms were heavily perfumed with herbs and flowers. Tapestries were hung, not just for decoration but to absorb odors. Yet the smell persisted. Over time, Henry developed severe ulcers on his legs, particularly on the site of earlier injuries. These wounds frequently reopened, becoming infected and emitting a foul odor noted by observers. The pain must have been relentless. With limited mobility, he could no longer hunt or joust as before. Physical activity diminished dramatically, but his eating habits did not adjust. If anything, they intensified. Food remained his comfort, his symbol of dominance, and perhaps even his distraction from physical suffering. By middle age, Henry's daily intake is estimated to have reached between 5,000 and 6,000 calories, possibly more on feast days. His main meal, often served late in the morning, could include multiple roasted meats, white bread reserved for the elite, and generous servings of ale or wine. Supper in the evening was equally heavy, featuring rich pies, salted fish, creamy custards, and sweet delicacies like marchpane, an early form of marzipan made from sugar and almonds. Vegetables played a minor role in the Tudor diet, often boiled until soft and lacking nutritional value. Fresh fruits were eaten cautiously because many believed they caused illness. The overall diet was heavy in saturated fats, salt, and sugar. Alcohol consumption added another layer of strain. While water in the 16th century was often unsafe, leading many to drink ale instead, Henry's intake exceeded mere necessity. Wine and strong ales flowed freely at court. Combined with high-fat meals, this constant drinking placed enormous pressure on his organs. Modern medical experts analyzing historical records suggest Henry likely suffered from severe obesity, gout, and possibly type 2 diabetes. His waist reportedly expanded to over 50 inches. Armor made for him in later years had to be drastically resized, providing physical evidence of his dramatic weight gain. As his body changed, so did his temperament. Chronic pain and metabolic disorders can influence mood, and Henry's later reign was marked by volatility and suspicion. While political pressures certainly contributed to his harsh decisions, it is difficult to ignore the physical toll his lifestyle had taken. The energetic prince transformed into a ruler who required mechanical assistance to mount a horse and who struggled to walk across his chambers. Yet despite visible decline, the feasts continued. The court maintained its rituals of abundance, as though reducing excess would signal weakness. Food for Henry was never merely sustenance, it was intertwined with authority. When he broke from the Catholic Church and established the Church of England, he demonstrated that even spiritual power could be reshaped by his will. Banquets reinforced this message. Exotic spices imported from distant lands, mountains of meat, and endless courses communicated one clear idea: the king lacked nothing. In a world where famine and scarcity were common among ordinary people, Henry's overflowing table was a display of supremacy. Yet biology does not bow to royalty. As the 1540s progressed, Henry's health worsened significantly. The leg ulcers became more severe, possibly leading to systemic infections. Obesity increased the strain on his cardiovascular system. Limited mobility likely worsened circulation problems, creating a vicious cycle. Each day of inactivity encouraged further weight gain, and each pound added new pressure to his already damaged body. Physicians of the time lacked the understanding to address these interconnected conditions effectively. Treatments often involved poultices, bleeding, or herbal concoction methods that offered little long-term relief. There is also speculation that Henry may have suffered from additional endocrine disorders, though definitive diagnosis centuries later is impossible. What remains clear is that his physical decline was visible and rapid compared to his youthful vigor. Portraits from his later years show a massive, imposing figure, broad, not with athletic muscle but with accumulated weight. He became a symbol of excess, both politically and physically. By January 1547, Henry lay dying at Whitehall Palace. He was 55 years old, not exceptionally old even for the 16th century. However, his body bore the burden of decades of indulgence and untreated illness. Reports suggest that he remained large and swollen, his leg wounds persistent until the end. Despite failing health, records indicate that rich foods were still brought to him. Habit, comfort, and royal expectation did not simply vanish in the face of mortality. When he died on January 28, 1547, England lost a transformative yet controversial monarch. Stories circulated that his coffin leaked due to the buildup of gases during decomposition, a detail possibly exaggerated over time, but symbolically powerful. Whether literal or embellished, the image of a king too large for containment reinforces the narrative of a life lived in excess. Henry VIII's diet alone did not define him. He reshaped England's religious landscape, strengthened naval power, and left a complex political legacy. However, his eating habits offer a deeply human dimension to his story. They reveal vulnerability beneath authority. They show how injury can trigger decline, how unchecked indulgence can spiral into dependency, and how power does not shield the body from consequence. In many ways, Henry's story feels startlingly modern. High-calorie diets, sedentary lifestyles, stress and overconsumption are not unique to Tudor England. The difference lies only in presentation. Where Henry dined on gilded plates beneath vaulted ceilings, modern excess may arrive in packaged convenience. Yet the biological outcomes remain strikingly similar. Chronic inflammation, heart disease, metabolic disorders, these are not new inventions but age-old responses to imbalance. The tragedy of Henry VIII is not that he enjoyed food. Pleasure in eating is universal and deeply human. The tragedy lies in imbalance compounded by injury and enabled by absolute power. No one at court could meaningfully restrict the king. No advisor could insist on moderation. To question his habits might have seemed both politically and personally dangerous. Thus the cycle continued unchecked. In the final analysis, Henry conquered many external forces, rival nations, rebellious nobles, even centuries-old religious authority, but he could not conquer his own appetites. His body, once a symbol of strength and dominance, became a reminder of limitation. Mortality arrived not dramatically on a battlefield, but gradually through years of excess and decline. His crown still sparkles. His authority remains unquestioned. Yet beneath velvet robes and golden chains, his heart strains, his legs ache, and his body carries the cost of decades of indulgence. In the silence beyond the music and feasting lies a quiet truth. Even the most powerful ruler cannot command immunity from consequence. Henry VIII's life reminds us that empires can be built with force and will, but the human body answers only to balance. And in that timeless law, king and commoner stand equal. If you enjoy powerful historical stories told with depth and realism, make sure to subscribe and join me for the next journey into the past, where history isn't just remembered, it's brought to life.